A story told by the Dalai Lama goes like this. Imagine that you're in an airplane flying low over some islands. It's not hard to imagine a place like this, right? There are scattered pockets of fog. And looking out through a clearing in the fog, you see a small rocky point protruding out of the water, and you notice someone standing on it, waving for help. And you feel very powerless, concerned, because like so much suffering in the world, there's no way to reach that person or get help before they're swept away. But then you see through the fog that there's an island close by that they cannot see. It's so close that there might even be a shallow land bridge to it. They could easily swim to it, even if they couldn't wade through the waters. And you would be aware of what was possible. And you would want to do whatever you could to alert the person and point the way to safety, to get a message to someone, to send help. When I heard that story, I could just feel a sense of urgency arising in me. I wanted to shout and to point and to send a flare, and I wanted to do whatever I could to show the way to safety. And haven't you at some time seen what is possible for someone? The greater good for someone, and you wanted it in such a way that you felt it with a kind of longing that actually aches. This is one way that compassion expresses itself. As the heart aches when the mind sees that there is the possibility for a shift of perspective that would allow us to see the way to avoid unnecessary suffering, the kind of suffering caused when, with just a different point of view, a different action, a different belief, we might find our way to safety. If you think that compassion is simply a sweet, gentle, weak, sentimental emotion that arises in the mushy part of the human heart, you might be in for a different idea altogether. You have not known the deep concern that compassion generates when we confront the possibility that we could do better, and you want with all your heart what is possible for the well-being of others. Compassion recognizes our human vulnerability, our oneness, our interdependence, and the fragility of all sentient life. As Stephen Levine said, we are all members of the community of impermanence. And when we see the person stranded on the rock, there is this instant recognition of our shared need for safety, a heartfelt clear seeing that all beings everywhere wish for a soft place to land, a refuge in life's storms, for help to arrive before it's too late. And although compassion and empathy are deeply intertwined, and the distinction is not always clear, compassion is more like that view from the airplane, a floodlight of attention that allows for some perspective and considers the best actions to take. While empathy is more like a spotlight of attention, like being down there on the rock with the stranger, feeling their fear and their hopelessness. Empathy is a beautiful, heartfelt caring, but if we don't have the inner support, the support of others, empathy can become difficult to bear. There may be a feeling state to compassion that often moves us to tears, but compassion is more of a presence than it is an emotion, a more sustainable presence, a heart space with a vision of a world where caring and concern is possible. And compassion is a determined movement towards that possibility. Compassion in its truest sense is a recognition, a celebration even of the possibilities of life. Empathy, compassion arise spontaneously as a natural outflowing of care, but compassion becomes a more reliable, sustained state when it is developed with practice. It requires insight. It requires self-awareness. It requires self-care and the wisdom to stabilize us in the face of emotional upset. And it requires a lot we might not have counted on, the understanding that this is more difficult to practice than we might have thought, and we won't do it perfectly. And then meeting this painful realization with self-compassion. Wisdom. Wisdom helps us train our compassion, can help us balance our empathy, knowing what to say yes to and what to say no to, and when to just step back and rest. To be discerning, to create healthy boundaries. We may not be able to save that person on the rock, but we give what we can, where we can, when we can. A kind word. Encouragement to people who are trying to do something positive and different in the world. Encouragement to people who are creating beautiful music. Encouragement to the people who are creating a beautiful community. We can offer our gratitude to one another, and we can work at becoming that calm, centered presence that can be a way for others, an example for others, a presence for others to be calm in the face of their own challenges and the crisis in the world. It might be just listening. It might be silently extending the loving kindness blessing. All are meaningful acts of compassion. No gesture is too small. And there's another way that wise compassion expresses in us. It turns us to compassionate inquiry into what is the problem here? What is the root cause of so much suffering? Archbishop Desmond Tutu said, there comes a time when instead of just pulling people out of the water, we have to go upstream and find out who's pushing them in. What's the source of so much suffering? At the core of so much pain, so many problems, is some messy, pesky belief that has its hold on us. It can be an inherited belief, an unexamined assumption, a widespread belief that compassion is weak, that the poor are lazy, that the rich are heartless, beliefs that we're right and they're wrong, beliefs separating us from each other, beliefs in our rugged individualism, beliefs in our self-sufficiency. As much as we're told that we're separate individuals, we barely exist. We don't exist as individuals. Beliefs draining our energy for creative solutions, beliefs causing so much conflict. What are these things? What are these pesky things we call beliefs? A belief is something we take as true, but beliefs are just thoughts. Your opinions, supercharged with the energy and the attention we give them, and yet they're the primary filter of our lives. A belief is more about believing than that any particular thing is true. Beliefs influence so many aspects of our lives and our experience of reality. It's important to take a look at our beliefs because we're very good at latching on to a belief, but not so good at determining whether or not a belief is true. So please let me be very clear about this. Beliefs are inevitable. We all have them. We're going to keep on having them. And I'm certainly not proposing that we do away with beliefs because it isn't possible, and they can also serve a healthy function. And yet, sometimes I do wish for a little moratorium, just a little break. I like to imagine what if, in the way that those alerts go out testing our emergency broadcasting system, that every Sunday morning, say about 10 o'clock, a trumpet sounds, a gong chimes, a church bell rings, announcement goes forth. For the next 60 seconds, your beliefs about yourself and others will be temporarily suspended. What if we looked at each other? What if we looked in the mirror with that kind of clarity? I imagine, what if we could just stop believing that we're different affiliations, political or otherwise? What if we could appreciate our differences instead of believing them? And when those beliefs are dropped, here's what I imagine. There is so much love. Imagine yourself in a moment of pure presence of the eternal sunrise in your heart and in your soul. What would that be like? I asked that question at a retreat one time, and someone said, it would be freedom. It would be freedom. I tell the story just about anywhere where people will listen, and I know I've told this story to you before, so thank you for listening again. About an incident I had in college. I was one of those students, every professor loves. Young person, I really didn't need the benefit of his wisdom because I already had all the answers. I really knew that it was one way. And I knew that what we had to believe. And I knew what happened if we didn't believe in a very specific way. So I was really there just to educate him. When the professor challenged me by saying, you need to take your beliefs responsibly. You need to take responsibility for your beliefs. You need to look at the implications of your beliefs, the consequences of your beliefs, because your beliefs have an impact on others and on yourself and on your relationships and on this planet. Wow. He said, for instance, that a belief that others who believed differently than I did were eternally doomed. He says, does that really fit with what you hold most dear? Well, what I held most dear, actually, when I stopped to think about it, was mercy and compassion. As obvious as it seemed, I hadn't thought about how a belief needed to be held to a high standard, how it needed to fit with my values. Beliefs that are fearful, that exclude and condemn, they're merciless. And they're very dense. And it's difficult to hear the voices of our better angels through those kinds of beliefs. We have to look at the implications of what we believe. That teaching changed my life. It continues to change my life. I'm still considering what this means. Rutger Bregman, he's a Dutch historian. And he wrote a book called Humankind, A Hopeful History. Imagine that. And he takes on the most commonly held beliefs about human nature. He calls it a persistent myth that our very human nature is selfish and aggressive and quick to panic, that we have this thin surface of civility that is weak and subject to crack at any moment. And he exposes the flaws in this myth and cites other sources that put a whole different light on the subject. And of course, it's complicated. He doesn't deny that. Yes, struggle, conflict is clearly present in our human history, and yet cooperation was much more crucial for survival. Our distant relatives relied on cooperation, not as a belief, but as a basic fact of life. And Bregman notes the power of beliefs to shape our experience and our worldview, and takes to task those that exploit our natural inclination to be on the alert for danger and to keep us safe. Bregman places a lot of blame on the way we consume the news. He says it's a questionable belief that when we're consuming the news that we're better informed, that we're more responsible citizens. And he cites dozens of studies that reveal the news is a mental health hazard that encourages hopelessness and leads to more depression and stress. He calls it propaganda for promoting mean world syndrome. The way the news is presented breeds cynicism, and cynicism is easy answers, an easy theory of everything. When someone does something cruel or evil, we're quick to say, well, that's human nature for you. But when someone does something kind and generous and thoughtful and considerate in the many ways that they do daily, does anyone ever say that's human nature for you? Why is it so difficult to challenge our beliefs when not rethinking them has such dire consequences? Well, having a fixed belief can make us feel comfortable. It can offer us solace in times of anxiety. It offers safety. Even fearful beliefs lead people to believe that they have something reliable to hold on to. So much so that it can feel very challenging to have our beliefs questioned. It can feel risky. It can challenge a person's sense of safety, their identity, their ego. When we say things like, well, how the heck can they believe that kind of thing? We have to understand that this is their sense of identity. This is all they have. We can become so defensive when our beliefs are questioned, feel threatened, and then more entrenched as we defend them. It's dangerous when we make our beliefs our identity. Getting to the truth of something doesn't have to be so personal. Someone once said the best evidence that you have a mind is your ability to change it. Unfortunately, we don't live in a world that values rethinking our views or admitting our wrong ideas or choices. It takes courage. It takes courage to rethink and reconsider our positions and our opinions and our fears and our alliances. It's important to look at our beliefs, to question them from time to time. And there are a lot of ways to do this. I'm suggesting just 4 simple ways here to test your beliefs. First, you might ask yourself, well, how did I come to believe what I did in the first place? Generally, there's a story there. Starts early in life when the seeds are sown of what would become your worldview. Beliefs about good and bad, who's right, who's wrong, beliefs about other people. For example, in our Western culture, there is a belief dating far back into Greek and Roman times, yet very prevalent today in our society, that compassion has to be earned, that we have to work for it. Totally negates our common humanity and our interdependence. The second question is, well, how does having your belief make you feel? It's quite common that a belief will make people feel they're more or less in control of them in situations. Does what you believe make you feel more self-righteous? Ooh. Watch out for that one. Or does it make you more understanding? Do your beliefs make you feel more fearful, more suspicious, more cynical? Do they inspire you, or do they depress you? Your third question, are your beliefs useful? If we ask our beliefs about their usefulness, we find out if they motivate us or limit us. And the fourth question is, what are the implications and the consequences and the impact of our beliefs? Because our beliefs have side effects. And this is the question that tests our beliefs and their integrity. For example, do our beliefs justify behaviors that aren't in alignment with our values? What's most important to you? What matters most? Those are your values. Our beliefs tend to divide us, but our values bring us together. And the person stranded on the rock may have made some errors in judgment, but in that moment, they are neither red or blue, but someone in danger and in need of our help. Our souls, our spirits, our higher truth speaks to us all the time about what matters most, our values, but not so much about what we believe. And it's hard to hear that higher truth through the density of so many of our beliefs, but when our beliefs and our values are in alignment, we have something of power and possibility. We're going to have beliefs of one way or another, so we might as well be conscious, wide awake, active participants in this belief-making process and explore what matters most, because as this research clearly shows, there's a self-fulfilling prophecy to what we believe. Know your values with exquisite clarity, and how they are expressed in our belief is essential for personal integrity and for spiritual growth. So what does all this belief talk have to do with compassion? Well, our beliefs affect the action we take and the attitudes we hold. It's very much about compassion. And we can't advance our practice of compassion unless we recognize how our beliefs and our belief-making minds capture all of us, and stop to consider the implications. Real change in the world, it has been said, will only come from a change of heart and a radical change in how and what we believe. And certainly in this journey of humankind, we have come here to do more than just believe something. There is this common misunderstanding that when we have some kind of spiritual awakening or insight, or we think of ourselves as good people, that compassion will just be a natural byproduct of that realization. Well, certainly there can be, as the Buddhists say, a quivering of the heart, the recognition of our oneness. But it is not a given that we will know how to live this fundamental awareness of that oneness. There's a lot of confusion and a lot of denial about this. Compassion awakens in us to be expressed, and it needs guidance and training and wisdom so we can choose our beliefs wisely and believe responsibly. And when we do so, it provides us with a meaningful, powerful expression of our spirituality. When we ask, what is the most compassionate thing to do or not to do, to say or not to say, it immediately brings things into perspective and offers us guidance. What is the most compassionate thing to do, not in a self-conscious, not in a self-righteous way, but in a way that provides us with a view as if we're flying over the mountains? For me personally, there's another layer to this. In my own spiritual path, in my own chosen belief. For what I believe is that the sacred is the great compassionate heart of spirit, a forever presence, holding a heart space with us, with a vision of the world where caring and concern is possible. And that this great compassionate heart of spirit yearns with us for this kind of world. It is alive. It is alive with a radiant presence, a determined movement towards that possibility. That, my friends, is my chosen belief. Thank you.